Hi, it's Schumann, executive career and life coach and author of the book Falling in Love with Your Job. Today I want to share with you what I believe is probably the most powerful piece of information that I have. It has transformed my life, the life of many of my clients and loads of other people I know. What I'm going to talk to you is about how we create emotions and how we can manage them. If you never heard about this before, then do keep listening because it's very powerful and I believe every human being should have this knowledge. So let's get started. I'm going to give you the summary first and then I'm going to cover the content in a bit more detail. How do we generate our emotions? Well, our emotions are generated by our thoughts. They're not generated by what happened to us in the past. They're not generated what we think will happen to us in the future. And they're not generated by our environment, what other people do to us. And I'm going to cover this in a bit more detail later on. And how does that thinking work? How do we actually think as human beings? Well, there are only two modalities of thinking that we have. It's either words or pictures. It's as simple as that. And if we know that our thoughts determine how we feel, and those thoughts are either words or pictures, then we also know that we simply need to change the words or pictures to feel differently. And why is this important? Well, if we change our emotions, we can also change the way we interact with our environment, and that will create a different reality. If you walk around confident and positive, you will create different life outcomes to when you are depressed and low in confidence. Can you see that? So that was a summary. Now let's break this down and talk about these elements in a bit more detail. I started by saying that our emotions are generated by our thoughts, not by our past, not by our future, not by our environment. So let's look at an example. Let's assume your boss shouted at you a few hours earlier and you feel angry about it. Well, that event was in the past. It no longer exists. It's therefore impossible that this event has an impact on your emotional state right now because it just no longer exists. The only thing that exists is your thoughts and your pictures that you have in your mind about that event and your interpretation of that event. And that may not even be a complete representation of what happened. It will be your interpretation, which may be a little bit distorted. Equally, if you're worried that your boss might shout at you at the next day because you have to tell him or her something about something that you didn't do right at work, then that future event cannot have an impact on your emotional state either because it hasn't actually happened yet. It's just your representation of what might happen in the future, your words and pictures in your mind that create that emotion. And now let's imagine your boss is there, you are in the moment and he or she shouts at you. That shouting alone cannot create your emotions either. Because there are actually different ways you could react to that. It might be that you're the kind of person who thinks, oh, just let him shout. I don't mind, has nothing to do with me, and he will be okay in a few hours. So you don't actually get upset. Or you could be a person who takes it very personal and thinks, oh my God, yes, I'm really not good enough, and I deserve that. Or you could be the person who gets angry because you have a belief that actually you've done nothing wrong. And you fight back. Or maybe you even laugh about the situation because you think your boss shouting there is so ridiculous. Can you see how the shouting could trigger a number of different emotions and then a number of different reactions that you could choose? And which emotion you choose doesn't depend on your boss shouting at you. It depends on what you make out of it through the words and your pictures that you choose to process the environment. Does it make sense? And the reason why this is so powerful is that it means we are not a slave to our emotions. Whilst we maybe cannot entirely control them, we can manage them by changing the words and the pictures in our mind. And there are loads of ways in which we can do this. There are exercises that we use in neuro-linguistic programming. There are meditations, visualizations, affirmations, or you can just become better at switching your thoughts, your pictures and your words in the moment when you catch yourself, when you have an unresourceful thought that creates an emotion that you don't really want to have in that moment. This is a huge field, and how to work with these exercises is outside the scope of this video. For the time being, I just invite you to become more aware of those words and pictures in your mind that trigger your emotions, and see what can maybe already change just by becoming aware of them. And if you want to go a step further, then how about this? How about keeping a thought diary for a week? Write down all the negative thoughts, your fears, your worries, your doubts, your negative beliefs. Write them down for 1 week so that at the end of the week you can see actually all the programs that are running on autopilot and that determine how you feel and how you behave. And maybe then you can see a connection between the reality around you and the inner world that you have created. I hope this has been useful. I would love to hear your views on this. If you don't know how to go about this, if you want to have any further guidance, do give me a shout. I would love to hear from you. Thanks very much. More soon. Bye.